Welcome to Section 25's FroSci podcast. Today we're exploring the mind-bending intersections of AI, physics, and reality and more. So stay tuned for a journey through the science shaping our world. You won't want to miss this.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. Today's episode is called Superpowers or Nah. We are your hosts, Frankie,
Santi,
Christian,
I'm Alexa.
I'm really excited for this episode because I love superheroes. I grew up on the Marvel movies and comics.
I actually dressed as Superman for Halloween when I was 8. Clearly, I've always been fly.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, I've always wondered if superpowers could actually be attained. Am I just one Freak Lab incident away from becoming the next Wonder Woman?
you might be onto something. That's why today we are talking about some scientific experiments that can lead to the possibility of superpowers.
Oh my god, I've always wanted to have super strength. I'd say goodbye to my Dodge gym membership.
Bro, you haven't been since EDSA. It should have been canceled since the first month.
Don't listen to Frankie, Christian, because you actually may be able to. In 2017, researchers created a biomechanically assistive garment which actually helps the muscles lift things by up to 50%. If we kept improving on this idea, you could have a real-life Iron Man suit.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Christian, you should get that.
I think it would be much more useful to you, Frankie.
Guys, can we focus on actual attempts on the possibility of superpowers, like glowing cats?
Glowing cats? How did that even happen? How does that relate to superpowers? Does that mean I could possibly glow?
Well, not quite. While researchers were trying to figure out a way to treat genetic disorders like HIV, they injected a fluorescent gene from a jellyfish into the DNA of cats, which allowed the cute kittens to glow under ultraviolet light. Isn't that so sick?
You mean I can get my cat to help me look for my AirPods when I accidentally drop them under the bed?
Yeah, and you may not even need your cat's help. Researchers in 1981 discovered that genes can be injected into the early stages of baby mice and carried out throughout their adult stages and even be passed on. They're now used for medical research, agriculture, and biotechnology. These findings could possibly be applied to humans. So far, the study has opened the door to transgenic animals, which are animals with genes from other species.
Well, what if I want to be like Usain Bolt? Or my GOAT, LeBron James?
You might be able to. Elite athletes like him are the closest thing we have to superheroes, and analyzing them and their unique genetic traits can provide a glimpse into a potential future with genetically engineered superhumans.
How so?
Well, researchers found a trend across elite athletes who shared 3 genetic variants that were linked to endurance-related compounds in the body. Suppose scientists can replicate these compounds and, through genetic engineering, alter the genes of humans to share the same high endurance as elite athletes. In that case, we can have superhumans roaming the planet everywhere.
Hey, Santi, you can stop drinking all the protein shakes now.
Oh.
However, how ethical is human experimentation really?
I don't know, but I offered you up as a lab rat.
Very funny. But really, we have to think of the implications of classism and who decides what makes a better human. Imagine a world where the rich can buy their way to superpowers. It really is giving dystopia.
Dystopia? More like utopia. Imagine being able to fly? I'm sorry, but I'd do anything to travel the world.
I mean, I'd love to teleport myself in and out of the next FroSci lecture. In all honesty though, while it would be nice, it can also be weaponized and lead to potential discrimination between the majority-minority. Frankie, what do you think?
Although our current medical system has created many disparities, genetic mutation and engineering can be a useful and preventative tool to address certain health issues, since most of the diseases stems from the replication of mutated genes. So it's not so scary because we can engineer super healthy humans.
I guess it does have some issues, but testing on human subjects is always controversial and could be dangerous. I think it's an open-ended question and up in the air. I'd like to know what our listeners think. Send your opinions.
Guys, I think what's important is to enjoy the imagination we have, because that in itself is our greatest superpower.
Anyways, if you're too lazy to imagine, appreciate the imagination of others by signing up to get tickets for the upcoming release of the Fantastic Four First Steps. Fandango are our sponsors for today, so please make sure to sign up using our link.
As always, subscribe to our channel to stay updated about all the latest news and updates happening in the chaotic but interesting world of science. Who knows, you may even be able to receive private access to our subscribers-only watch party next week, where viewers will see us injecting superpowers into Santi and Frankie.
What?
Unfortunately, no amount of genetic engineering will allow Santi or Frankie to obtain superhuman riz anytime soon.
Oh man. Well, thank you guys for listening and make sure to tune in next semester.
Hero Welcome to the Nerds in Motion podcast. Today, we're on episode 1, where we talk about whether or not time travel is possible. My name is Daniel, and I'm joined by Tejas and Nikos.
So, I actually have a really sad story, guys. I was walking my dog around the park the other day, and I was stupid enough not to put a leash on it, and so unfortunately my dog started running, and he just went straight into, traffic on the street, and he got hit by a car, and it was just really horrible. Blood splattered everywhere, so, it's very sad for me at this moment.
God.
I know, thank you guys.
That's so sad. I'm so sorry for you.
It's horrible. It was, such a disgusting thing to see. And then, pigeons also started picking at it. It was horrible. But, everyone's telling me to go and get a new dog, but, really, the emotional attachment I had with my dog, I just feel like I'd really like to go back in time and put my dog on a leash and make sure that that doesn't happen to him. So, I don't know, guys. Is time travel possible?
Huh, that's really interesting. I feel like we have to unpack that question, because there's so many weird and bizarre things in time travel to talk about.
So there's two big ideas we'd like to talk about when we're talking about time travel. The first is closed time-like curves, and the second is the grandfather paradox. So closed time-like curve is a consequence of Einstein's theory of general relativity, which is a theory of how massive objects shape space-time. So a closed time-like curve is a shape in 4D space that loops back on itself. 4D space is like the 3D space, except time is a fourth dimension. In 3D, this is like moving in a circle, but in 4D, this means that you return to where you started in time.
Huh, that's really weird, because from what I've heard about time travel, there's also this thing called the grandfather paradox, which essentially says that if you were to go back in time and, say, kill your grandfather, would that even make time travel possible? Because obviously your grandfather would have to father your parents, and then your parents would have to give birth to you. So would it even be possible to go back in time to kill your grandfather? I think that's a really weird question, and I wonder what physicists are saying and what they think about this issue.
Okay, so I actually recently read a paper out of a lesser Ivy, Cornell, and it was just very interesting, because it was talking about closed time circuits and time travel and whether they're theoretically possible. And essentially, the whole point of the paper was that these are actually possible in certain parts of time-space, and that it is actually consistent with both reversible dynamics and free choice in physics. So this basically means that obviously, we're not able to time travel in Earth under these conditions, but that in the broader universe, time travel is actually possible in accordance with the laws of physics.
Wait, yeah, that's really cool. Because I actually was reading this paper from some scientists at MIT, and what they did was that, they used this, really complicated computer. I think it was called a quantum computer, and using this computer, they actually simulated a photon or light particle, and this photon was going to go back in time, somehow, and try to kill its former self. But what they discovered was that sort of like the grandfather paradox, this photon that was traveling back in time didn't actually end up dying in almost all the trials. So if anything, the grandfather paradox doesn't really seem to be a problem. They didn't exactly know why, and I'm not too sure why this happens, but if this is the case, maybe time travel is possible.
That's really interesting. I read a paper from our very own Professor Brian Greene about the possibilities of time travel if we lived in a space with more than 4 dimensions. In this space, which is called the brain world, signals can seem to travel faster than light or even backward in time. But when you look at the full journey of everything still happens in order. So no matter how weird it gets, time travel paradoxes like changing the past and the grandfather paradox aren't actually possible.
That's really interesting. I guess if time travel were to be possible, there'd be some pretty interesting implications. Because, for example, if you could relay or send information back into the past, that would be revolutionary for computer science, since it would allow computers to solve problems way faster. But really, I feel like there's not much research done in practice. All of this feels like theory to me. And the research that I read and all of your papers, all of these experiments were done on the quantum scale, not on actual human beings. So Nikos, I don't really think we can save your dog anymore.
That's so sad.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. So unfortunately, I think that's also the conclusion that I got from all of this. But I mean, hey, I learned more about physics, and I guess I'll just mourn and at some point get a new dog.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to follow our Instagram and join our Time Travel Study Club. See you next time.
Hi everyone, my name is Cyril.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Wilson.
Thank you again for tuning into our podcast segment Lion Chat. And if you remember, last week we gave everyone the chance to vote on what our next topic was. And if you remember, the options were either White Lotus Season 3 recap, NBA playoff predictions, or quantum computing. 87% of you guys voted for quantum computing, which was super surprising considering we have never talked about science on this podcast, but we're going to do our best. And that leads us into our first question. How and why is light better in computers than electricity, and how can it help ChatGPT instantly finish your homework?
Funnily enough, I tried to do some research, but I couldn't understand anything. So I asked ChatGPT to help me, and this is the gist of what I got. Borealis is a quantum computer made by a company called Xanadu in Canada. But it's not just any quantum computer. It's special because it uses light to do its thinking instead of electricity like our traditional computers. Borealis did something amazing. It solved a math problem called boson sampling so fast that even the world's current fastest supercomputer would take thousands of years to do the same thing. Borealis did it in a tiny fraction of a second, or 50 million times faster. The scientists demonstrated quantum advantage, meaning the quantum computer is better than normal computers at a certain task. Borealis now demonstrates how incredible future quantum computers will be when we're able to implement this technology to more than just a hyper-specific math problem.
Wow.
Wait, so what are some ways researchers are developing light-based chips for these computers in the real world?
That's a fantastic question. Again, this isn't science isn't my forte, but I did some research into a group of scientists who created a synthetic synapse, which is basically a computer chip, but instead of using electricity like a normal computer, this one uses light. Because in your brain, synapses connect neurons and help you learn by getting weaker and stronger, and they wanted to take the same approach to computing to make computers more brain-like. The device created in this study basically changes when it's hit by light, kind of like a light dimmer switch that changes the strength of the connection. And the coolest part is that because it's happening all on a chip with light, it makes it super fast and efficient. And this is one step closer to something called neuromorphic computing, where machines are focused on learning instead of just calculating. And the good thing about neuromorphic chips is that they're much more efficient since they only activate the parts of a system that are necessary. Also, with this synthetic synapse, it's able to learn and change over time based on the data it experiences. And this chip can be implemented in the future of things like AI, which will help all of our ChatGPT, robotics, and brain-machine interfaces. And basically, by having computers that use this kind of technology, maybe eventually we can have computers that act like our very own brain and are more efficient at learning.
So what is the future of this technology, Joshua?
Great question. Integrated photonics is a revolutionary way of building light-based chips. Since the 1970s, light has been an essential tool in building electrical chips through a process called lithography, in which a pure slice of a material called silicon is used as a base and applied with a light-sensitive chemical called photoresist. Then light itself is used to etch the parts of the circuit on the base. Lithography is essentially the process of carving roads for electricity or light to travel in chips. With integrated photonics, light itself is not only used to build a chip, but harnessed to such a precise level to make it travel through the computers, using it as the main carrier of information. So just like an electronic chip uses small wires and components to move electricity around, an integrated photonic chip uses tiny roads to move light around, allowing it to process and send information using light, the fastest substance in the universe. At the frontier of this frontier is a goal towards a lithography-free light-based chip, which has been proven possible by researchers at the University of Pennsylvania. Instead of carving roads, the researchers proposed controlling how much light gets absorbed or boosted in different parts of the chip simply with code that activates an injection of electrons to those parts, influencing the route of light as it is guided to the areas with more energy in the chip. No more carving means no more fixed designs. and you do not need to make structural changes to the chip to change the direction in which the information carrier flows. This opens up huge potential for faster, smarter optical computing and maybe one day, light-speed AI.
Unfortunately, we're almost out of time today, but let's not forget today's sponsor.
Speaking of AI,
OpenAI, the sponsor of today's video and the leaders at the frontier of artificial intelligence that are continually innovating and pushing the boundaries for high-performance large language models. We already know the limit of ChatGPT is your own creativity, and today I'm delighted to announce a development that will revolutionize AI, ChatBTC, the first artificial intelligence powered by quantum processors. With a vast million-fold increase in speed, ChatGPT is more efficient than ever, so now you can finish your semester 50 million times faster. Thank you for listening, and thank you to OpenAI for being today's sponsor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your FroSci friends. I'm Ray.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Salaya, and today we're cracking open one of the biggest questions in science and philosophy, which is the present even real?
Yeah, so I really started thinking about this question recently, when I watched the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's a scene where Evelyn, the main character, jumps through all these different dimensions of time and experiences them all at once as they're happening in the same time. It really got me thinking about our own lives and what it even means, and what it means to even be in our now, and if it's even real.
Oh, yeah, that is such a good question. And I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once a few times, actually. I absolutely love it, but I think the film raises these really important questions, but not only philosophical questions, but also scientific questions, such as, is there really like such a thing as the now? And, you know, the idea that there is a single and universal now might just be an illusion.
And so great point. And there's this super simple way to see this. We can legitimately just look up into the sky. I think in Montana, where I grew up, the stars were an exact proof that we never see the present the way we think we do.
Could you explain a little bit why, like, we see the past in the stars then a little bit with, like, the speed of light? What does that mean?
So, do you want to take the head on that?
Yeah, sure. I was just gonna say, like, funny that you guys bring that up because as we have been learning, like light travels at a constant speed, which is 300,000 kilometers per second. Yeah, because of this constant, the time it takes for light to enter our eyes, such that we could see an object, depends on the speed of light. So in many ways, when we're looking into the night sky and we're looking at all these stars, we're really kind of looking into the past because these stars are light years away. So we could actually see them. So it's crazy. It's like looking into the night sky where it's really, we're looking into the past because of this, because of the constants of the speed of light. So in a way, it's not instantaneous. And as we're looking into the night sky, there are many, many points of the past that we're looking at, just really trippy.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm just wondering now, like, how that relates to Einstein a little bit and what we've learned in class.
Ray, that's a great question. And we learned this in seminar actually a few weeks ago. The laws of physics, this is going to be a Spark Noted version, but they're the same for all observers in any initial frame of reference. And I think the key word is initial frame of reference, that these relativity theories are different for everyone. So the speed of light in a vacuum is the same for all observers, regardless of their relative motion or the motion of the light source. But I do think that we have to bring this back, and the initial frame of reference is going to be different for everyone. So what we experience here on Earth is going to be a different present than what someone on a far distant planet is experiencing.
Wow, that's really interesting. It also got me thinking about just something called the Minkowski diagram, which actually, like, we're able to plot what you talked about. And just tying back into, like, those ideas of Einstein and just, like, the stars in the present, I read an article recently by Veselin Petkov called "Is There an Alternative to the Block Universe View?" And basically, that view is that all the moments that we've experienced, so the past, the present, and the future, are all happening at the same time. And so a good analogy for that is, like, think about a book. We have all the pages, the past pages, the pages we're about to read, but we're only able to stick to one page at a time. And so I thought that was just really cool and really heightens and highlights that though we're always experiencing time, we don't really know what it is and what it feels to be in the present.
Yeah, just that idea of like simultaneity and how it's relative and really like nothing really happens at the same time because of all these because of Einstein's special relativity and things like the speed of light.
Um, well, guys, I think that was a great conversation. Yeah, it like really brought me into perspective and helped me understand, I guess, the movie a little bit more so the physics of it. So I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks guys. This is really interesting.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow our Instagram.
And don't forget to share this podcast with friends and family and leave a
Yes,
comment
yes,
down
yes.
below.
We'll see you
Yes,
next week,
thank you.
friends.
Bye.
Friends.
Bye, friends. Bye.
Bye. Bros are friends.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the baddest of them all? Welcome to my wicked world.
Brain. So today we want to investigate the psychology of social media. Why is it so engaging and addictive? So dopamine is this neurotransmitter where if you experience reward, such as getting that #1 victory royale,
love that.
Yes, it's released and it makes you feel like that much happier. Your brain is like, wow, I want more dopamine, so let's keep on doing it again. And social media really capitalizes on that. It really capitalizes on this primal need for social connection, where large amounts of dopamine are released at once. And getting off of social media ends up making you have a dopamine deficient state, where you're like, wow, like I feel so sad now. Let's log right back on.
I'm also going to explore how it affects your actual experience, your memory and your engagement and your enjoyment. There are lots of concerns about brain rotting your core, but so, we're also investigating the science of one's experience. And what did we find? So, doom scrolling decreases mindfulness. So, the Oxford Dictionary defines doom scrolling as the act of obsessively scrolling through social media or news feeds about negative news. So, negative posts tend to trend higher, and this is explained by the social media theory we discussed previously. Directing attention can pose difficulties. This can mean discomfort in confronting the thoughts and emotions, especially associated with trauma. So, doom scrolling really means the loss of personal control and mind. However, the methods used to gather this info aren't exactly perfect. Conducted by this Turkish study, they use the doom scrolling scale. This scale tends to bias participants towards bad news doom scrolling. So the internet addiction in general leads to less focus on activities and interpersonal communication, and that can lead to increased loneliness and decreased self-efficacy. The study also found that there's a positive correlation between short-form video content and sleep quality and social anxiety using a questionnaire that they sent out to all. Media impairs memory when it's used to externalize an experience.
In terms of biological changes, there's actually findings that suggest that adolescents' brain changes as a result of increased social media usage. A longitudinal study found that adolescents who use social media had a higher cortical thickness in the lateral prefrontal cortex area and medial PFC, and stronger decreases in the lateral PFC and temporal parietal junction.
They found that adolescents with lower mental well-being had actually lower baseline levels of surface area in the medial prefrontal cortex and also the posterior superior temporal sulcus, which are also involved in decision making. But this also shows that there's not exactly a direct association between social media use and mental well-being if we're looking at it biologically. This study found that the different levels that people use social media at, like high or low, and also their mental well-being, are both associated with their individual differences in structural brain development. More so, it comes from like genetic changes that they already had, rather than like the environment that they have put themselves in. However, mental well-being and development are more due to these genetic factors, while the changes in cortical thickness and also social media use are more associated with like your peers and like the environment surrounding you.
And some takeaways you need to think about when we're discussing this is it helpful to define mental illness? And more so, there's a push for a new disorder to be put in the DSM, internet addiction disorder. A psychologist, for instance, his name is Beard, recommends that we diagnose internet addiction disorder by the following criteria, such as the need to use the internet with increased amount of time in order to achieve satisfaction, they have jeopardized or risked the loss of a significant relationship, job, educational or career opportunity, they've lied to family members about internet usage, and they use the internet as a way of coping with feelings of helplessness, guilt, anxiety, depression. With Gen Z having the highest rates of treatment seeking for disorders out of all of the generations, it's no surprise that they've also created their own strategies for combating mental issues. They created a fad or an internet trend called the dopamine detox, which essentially means that you're trying to eliminate everything that's pleasurable from your life in order to recenter, refocus. An article from Harvard Health, though, has concerns about this. They say that it misunderstands science and can spawn maladaptive behaviors. They've interviewed Dr. Cameron Seppa, and Seppa recommends, instead of dopamine detox, which is cutting off cold turkey, they recommend a mindful intermittent fasting, where you could, for instance, practice dopamine fasting for 1 to 4 hours at the end of the day.
We've evaluated all the sides of this argument, and the conclusions seem vague. You might not know what to think, but don't be led astray by those who wish to control your mind.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So, don't be sheep. Investigate and think for yourself. And on that note, the first step is to subscribe to our podcast for more radical free-thinking ideas. And even better, with our $250 glasses and new course just for $50, actually $49.99.
Whoa!
You can become the ultimate free thinker.
Break the matrix!
Wow!
Hi guys, I'm Ashley, and I'm going to blow your mind for a second. Everything we know, stars, planets, trees, even your dog, make up less than 5% of the universe. The rest, invisible. We can't see it, touch it, or even define it fully, but we know it's there. It's dark matter and dark energy, and they both establish the very geometry of the universe. Dark matter holds galaxies together. Dark energy, it's what's speeding them apart. They're two of the biggest mysteries in modern science. So what is all of this stuff? My friends Miriam, Christian, and Jessica are here to simplify it for you and take you through some of the wild new concepts that may well revolutionize the way we think about the universe. Did you know that dark matter doesn't emit light, reflect it, or block it? We can't see it with a telescope or touch it, but we know it's there because of how it affects gravity. One of the first big clues came from watching the galaxies spin. The stars on the edge of the galaxies are moving way faster than they should be. Based on how much visible matter is in those galaxies, the stars should fly off. But they don't. That tells us that something invisible is creating extra gravity and holding everything together. That something is dark matter. Another piece of evidence comes from gravitational lensing, where the gravity of huge galaxy clusters bends the light of more distant objects behind them, kind of like a cosmic magnifying glass. The amount of bending only makes sense if there's way more mass in those clusters than we can see. Again, dark matter fits the picture. As for what dark matter actually is, scientists have a theory.
Thanks, Ashley. That was the perfect intro. I'm Miriam.
I'm Christian.
And I'm Jessica. Let's pick up right where Ashley left off.
So sure, we've got this point where 95% of the universe consists of something that can't be seen. But we do know that it exists because of the effect that it has on what we can see.
For instance, galaxies. The stars at the periphery rotate much too quickly to be contained by the mass that can be seen. They must be flying off like frisbees, but they aren't. That informs us there is extra unseen gravity holding everything together. That is dark matter.
And to the contrary, we see space itself expanding at an even more accelerated rate with time. That's not motion. That's some force actually opening up space. Enter dark energy.
Researchers treated these for decades like two entirely separate mysteries, but suppose they're interconnected.
Yeah, and that's a great point, but I think it would be a great segment to go to quantum tools to detect dark matter. So let's begin with a recent paper from 2025 published in Nature called Quantum Enhanced Dark Matter Detection with In-Cavity Control, Mitigating the Rayleigh Curse by Shi, Brady, Gorecki, Macchione, Di Canidia, and Zhuang.
They set out to detect a potential dark matter particle known as the axon, who is notoriously hard to spot due to something called something known as the Rayleigh curse. It restricts us from being able to detect weak signals.
Their solution? Quantum devices. They use a method called quantum squeezing and entanglement inside one specific microwave cavity to fine-tune the signal.
And it worked. Their setup reduced the effects of the Rayleigh curse, and they found out the specific entangled photon states gave optimal performance, specifically at low temperatures.
If this method works, it could help scientists finally make light of dark matter in the lab, and that would be gigantic.
Now let's switch gears. This brings us to the next topic of negative mass. One theory, two mysteries. So let's talk about that theory. In 2018, physicists Alexandre Petit and Giovanni D'Agostini did something revolutionary in their article, Cosmology with a Negative Mass Component in Astronomy and Astrophysics.
They suggested that the universe might contain negative mass, matter that pushes away rather than pulls towards. It may sound outlandish, right? But it might be able to account for dark matter and dark energy as well.
They modeled general relativity and fluid dynamics as one, and their model reproduced two giant observations, galaxy rotation and the accelerating universe expansion.
That's a great point, Jessica. That implies one strange notion, negative mass, and only that could answer the two cosmic mysteries.
It's part of a new wave in physics, creating simpler, more unified theories that eschew deeply ingrained assumptions.
Now, on that note, let's dig deeper into the idea. In 2018, astrophysicist J.S. Farnes presented a unifying theory in his paper, A Unifying Theory of Dark Energy and Dark Matter.
Farnes theorized that negative mass is not just real, it's being generated continuously throughout space.
These negative mass particles would repel each other and spontaneously come together in halos around galaxies, explaining their rotation curves without the presence of unseen particles.
And at the same time, their repulsive nature would push the universe apart, mimicking the effects of dark energy.
That's a great point, and that's why Farnes tested this using the first ever 3D n-body simulations of negative mass matter. And the results? His model reproduced both galaxy behavior and cosmic expansion using one elegant mechanism.
It's a bold theory, but it doesn't violate physics. It just flips one sign we've always assumed was positive.
Thanks again to Ashley for bringing us up to speed, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. Okay, see you next time!
On FroSci,
Physics and reality.